Hello and welcome to the Mid-Range Jimbo Show. I'm Austin.
And I'm Michael. And if you'd like to hear about basketball, well, stay tuned. We're going to talk about how free agency is shaped up for the teams in the Eastern Conference. And if you like it, drop a like and subscribe. First, the Boston Celtics. I like kind of what they've done. I mean, they got a backup point guard. Jeff Teague, I mean, he's good at moving the ball around. I mean, not too much else, but it's what he's good at. So, I mean, that's what you get him to do. Losing Gordon Hayward is, I mean, it's gonna hurt the team, but it's good that they didn't pay him that much.
It is true because they obviously just maxed out Tatum. That's a lot of
Yeah,
money on the books too. Jaylen Brown almost got a max too. I don't think it's quite the max yet.
yeah, I didn't think it was
Maybe.
quite the max, but
Yeah.
I mean, just having that much money committed and then add Kemba Walker on top of it, I mean, you're almost at the salary cap right there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I don't know, just as a team, I mean, they got so many young guys.
They
Like,
do. And I'm,
how many
I'm
draft picks in the past 3 years?
oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we talk about Sam Presti and the Thunder with draft picks. That's what the Celtics were doing before that. That they were just stockpiling
I
draft
mean,
picks.
Sam Presti's on another level, but
This is true. And mentioning their draft picks, I'm really high on Aaron Naismith, who they took with the 14th pick.
yeah.
He's, what is he, like 6'8" wing with like a
Yeah, I don't know.
7+ wingspan,
Is it?
something
Oh,
like
I
that.
didn't know it was 7+, but
Yeah, it's something crazy like that. And, you know, on a team like that where you have three guys who can score the ball really well, and Tatum, Brown, and Walker, you're not going to need another scorer on the team. You need a guy kind of 3-and-D, which is what I think he's going to do.
Marcus Smart fits right in
Yeah.
that mold too. So
And
I mean,
Naismith, I think he's going to fit that role to a T. And he's probably going to be coming off the bench, obviously,
yeah, yeah.
as a wing on the Celtics.
Oh, that and then adding Tristan Thompson. I mean, that's just a guy who plays his role.
Yep.
You know what you're going to get from
Yep.
Tristan Thompson. So
They always need a center. That's a good center to get.
yeah. So Brooklyn Nets. Uh, I don't really know what exactly their plan was because they didn't get Harden exactly. So if they would have gotten Harden, I definitely would have I would have exactly known like what they wanted to do. I think they still want to get him. They just haven't made that move yet because I don't think Houston's going to make that move.
Right. Yeah, Houston's definitely hesitant to pull the trigger on that because they've gambled their whole future for Harden and Westbrook. They have
Yeah,
no draft picks for next 2-3 years, and if they're not having either of those players there and getting rid of like a guy like Robert Covington,
yeah.
that team's going to be bad.
I mean, but what Brooklyn has done without getting Harden, I mean, Bruce Brown, I'm a really big fan of Bruce Brown because I think he is a great role player. He's not going to be a guy who's going to get 15 points or whatever off the bench. But for a team like Brooklyn, you have Kyrie, you have Dinwiddie, you have LeVert, adding in Bruce Brown to that, just that four-man guard rotation. You get a guy that can play make a little bit. He's not super good at it. He's a good defender. Like, he's a very good defender. I would argue that he's probably the best guard defender on that team. I mean, I know LeVert's pretty good, but I think Bruce Brown is better. And I think that just really shores him up because you take out LeVert or Harris, whoever you're starting, toss in Bruce Brown, you're not going to worry about the scoring because it's still going to come from Kyrie and KD.
Yep. You have two bona fide scorers in those two, so you just need guys to surround them who can hit a couple shots, play good defense. And a guy who can hit shots that I really like is Landry Shamet, who they got from the Clippers in that.
Yeah.
I think it was the team trade.
Yeah, it was a three-team trade between.
He's basically JJ Redick. He
Yeah.
runs off screens. He can shoot the ball. He does all that stuff really well. He's not a great defender, but I mean,
You're not asking him to be a good defender. He's
Exactly.
out there to shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, he fits right into that Joe Harris mold that they have, and just adding in shooters to a team. I mean, you can't go wrong adding in shooters. He looked okay in the playoffs. There were some times where he's a little sus.
I think he got hurt too in that second round against Denver, if I remember correctly. He hurt his ankle.
Yeah, he did.
And that's why like someone like Reggie Jackson ended up getting minutes, if I remember right.
Well, that and then Brooklyn added Jeff Green, which I mean, an old pal of KD. He'll fit right in. I mean, yeah, he's a good scorer. I really love what he did in 2018 with the Cavs.
Right.
I don't know if he has that left in him, like what he did in the playoffs.
Probably not. And I mean,
But-
the thing with Jeff Green, he's one of the most inconsistent scorers we've ever seen. Like, we talk about Danny Green being inconsistent with shooting. If you look at Jeff Green with scoring,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Well, I mean, you look at what KD had in Golden State. Obviously, he doesn't have the same thing, but having a scoring point guard, a guy who, can go off on some nights, it'd be Clay or Jeff Green, even though those are two players that are not comparable in any other way.
Right. That's completely fair, too. And I mean, one of the biggest things, we got to see how KD comes back from this injury.
Yeah.
Because obviously Achilles injuries don't really bounce back from that and be the same player you ever are.
No, you really don't. I mean, the only player in history I can think of is Drexler, Clyde Drexler, I believe.
Wasn't it Dominique?
Maybe it was Dominique. Well,
I
don't
know
know.
Dominique came back and was still really, really good.
Well, he had one good year after the injury. So, I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out with KD.
Definitely.
But I think that's just more of a wait and see. So, their crosstown rival, the New York Knicks, I mean, they're a young team. They're still trying to build some things, but I think Obi Toppin, I mean, is a nice addition, but probably not the best one they could have made. But he is a New York boy, so
he is, and I like Toppin. He's going to bring that hype. He's he's really athletic. He can throw it down type of player, kind of like a Aaron Gordon type of guy.
I know he doesn't play the same, but he kind of just reminds me of Julius Randle.
I mean, that's kind of fair, yeah. I mean, it's just with the Knicks, they just get younger. That's what they keep doing. They need to be doing that. They need to quit doing where they trade all their young guys for an aging star, like the whole maybe Westbrook type situation.
That's something I hope the Knicks don't do, unless that's what it looks like they need, is somebody who could really run the offense and whatnot. Westbrook's not maybe the perfect guy for it, but star power with New York, I think he'd be a better fit than a lot of other guys would. And they did add some key role players. I mean, like, they got Nerlens Noel, who, I mean, he'll be a fantastic backup center.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he should not be signed to as cheap a deal as he's getting. He's worth so much more.
He is. People really undervalue him, I think, just because of the whole. He was the sixth pick in his draft, and he was supposed to be this great talent, and he only fell to six because he had torn his ACL.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be this amazing talent, and he really isn't that, but he's still a really quality NBA player to have on your team.
I mean, when you're looking at best defensive centers, I mean, going down the list, you're going to have obviously guys like Rudy Gobert and whatnot. But
definitely.
He's a guy who can give you like a solid 20 minutes a game, solid defense, be a lob threat, grab some boards.
Definitely.
I mean, you can't get much better than that price tag.
Oh, yeah.
So
he gets steals better than most centers I've seen, which is
active hands.
Very active hands. You don't think of that with centers, but like a guy like Hakeem Olajuwon got a lot of steals in his career. He's like top 15, I think, maybe 10
like that,
in blocks and steals. That's impressive, especially for a big guy.
It might be a bit much to compare Nerlens Noel to Hakeem.
Oh, definitely. Just in that one mold, the getting steals part.
Yeah. I mean, they also added Alec Burks. I mean, decent player. I mean, he did okay with the 76ers. I don't remember watching him too much. But MKG, I mean, he's a good defender. That's about it.
Yep. He's just a guy for defense. And, Tom Thibodeau, their new coach, loves defense.
Yeah.
So
I imagine he might get like 15 minutes a game if he's lucky, at least to start the season. And then Austin Rivers, I mean, I imagine he's going to start, because what other point guards do they really have? Emmanuel Quickley?
Unless they want their young guys playing more like Smith Jr. or Ntilikina, guys like that. But
yeah, I don't expect any of those guys to get more minutes than Austin Rivers.
That's fair. That's true.
But I mean, overall, I think they'll make an improvement as a team. But I mean, they're still going to be one of the worst teams in the East.
Oh yeah, improving for the Knicks isn't really a big thing to talk about.
So Philadelphia 76ers, I mean, Daryl Morey.
Daryl Morey. Yep.
Yeah, he did more in one off season to get them help than how long has Elton Brand been the GM? 3 years?
I thought he just came in this past year. Maybe it was the year before that too.
Maybe it's only 2 years. Because I thought it was 2018 that he came in.
Maybe.
But even then, whoever was before Colangelo failed to get shooters. And I mean, Daryl Morey, in the span of like 36 hours, got so much shooting around Ben Simmons and Embiid. Like, it's...
Right. And that's what you need to do with guys like that. Because Embiid, yes, he can stretch the floor. He's not the biggest three-point threat out there.
He's enough to where you have to respect him.
Exactly. You have to respect him. But
that's good enough.
Yeah. But then you have like a Ben Simmons who 7 feet from the basket, it's a bit iffy for the guy.
I mean, I don't know why Dallas gave up Seth Curry. That one doesn't make any sense to me.
Defense, because Josh Richardson has better defense than he does. And obviously, they were one of the worst defenses in the league, even though they had like the best offense ever in NBA history.
But, I mean, Philly obviously gets a great upgrade in him. He shot almost, 42%?
Something like that. I mean, he's the all-time leading three-point percentage leader. Yeah. That speaks for itself also. And Danny Green, good 3-and-D player. I know we all like to rag on Danny Green because he's pretty inconsistent.
Yeah.
He's still a very winning player, and he's going to give you really good defense every night.
Dude's got 3 championships.
Two back-to-back.
Yeah, 2 back-to-back with different teams, nonetheless. Granted, he was playing with Kawhi and then LeBron, but, I mean, he's a fantastic role player. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of teams in the NBA want him, even though fans clown on him. It's just because he plays good defense, and he is a threat to shoot. Even if he's not going to shoot at the highest clip, he still shoots well enough to where people have to respect him out there.
Definitely. And Terrence Ferguson, I think, is a pretty underrated pickup for him.
Yeah.
He's long, he's athletic, he can shoot a bit. He's not the best shooter on the floor, but he can definitely shoot a bit and help the team with that regard, because they're always going to need shooting when you have Ben Simmons and Embiid as your 2 main guys.
And then you add Dwight Howard into the mix. I think that's going to be exciting. Because, I mean, he did have that thing happen where, he tweeted out that he was coming back to the Lakers and then immediately signs with Philly. So, I don't know exactly what happened behind the scenes there, but, like, Philly's going to be a real interesting team. Yep. My question is, how is Tobias Harris still going to fit into the offense? Because, as we really saw, like, main stage these playoffs, he's not a shot creator for himself.
He isn't, no. And I don't know. He's really interesting player because he's gotten better, except this year. Every year of his career, he's always gotten better. And when he was with LA, there was the talks, potential all-star level, and that was with Doc Rivers. I think Doc Rivers knows how to utilize the guy really well. And
that and Stan Van Gundy used him really well in Detroit, too.
He did. That's very true.
So Philly will be interesting. I mean, obviously they'll make the playoffs, but they'll be an interesting team to see how all these pieces fit together. So next we have the Toronto Raptors, and obviously they're going to have some question marks. Losing Gasol and Ibaka, I mean, it's a big loss for the team. They lost their defensive anchors.
Yep.
And granted, they'll have Aaron Baines. They still have Chris Boucher. Guys, I think Aaron Baines fits into the culture.
He does. I mean, Aaron Baines is just he plays his role really well. He's developed into a very good 3-point shooter too.
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say very good, but good enough to where nobody's leaving him alone on a pick and pop.
That's true.
They're not going to game plan like that, at least.
That's very true. And I mean, I've heard people saying that Toronto may not even make the playoffs this year, which I don't get. They're still a very good team.
I don't get that either. I mean, the culture they have, the guys that they, still have, their main 3, like their best players, they still have them. And they were 2nd seed in the East, 2 seed?
They were 2 seed behind Milwaukee. Yeah. And they were doing better than the year before when they won the championship with Kawhi Leonard on their roster.
You take away a couple role players, granted they were important.
Very.
But you take away a couple role players, a team doesn't suddenly automatically just drop out of the playoffs.
Right. And everyone's saying, one of the big reasons they might is because of how much Siakam underperformed in the playoffs. Siakam, yes, he underperformed in the playoffs a lot.
Mhm.
He's still such a good NBA player. He's improved every year. He won Most Improved Player.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that. He was
Yeah.
drafted 4 years ago as the 27th pick.
Mhm.
Who thought he would be an all-star in 4 years? Who thought he would be the second option on a championship team?
Toronto thought that.
Toronto thought that because their development
Yeah.
is amazing, and Nick Nurse is an amazing coach.
Yeah, he's the best in the NBA. Obviously, he's going to make adjustments, and people that are doubting Siakam are just going to be proven wrong. And, I mean, Nick Nurse will continue to get better. He's going to run some things, maybe in, like, garbage time or whatever. Maybe, hell, even when they're playing, like, the better Eastern Conference teams, they're going to practice during games for what they're going to do in the playoffs. And, I mean, that's just a part of their culture. They're so prepared, so good at coaching. It's just you can't doubt this team. So we have the Chicago Bulls, who I think the best move they made in the offseason was getting rid of their coach. Getting rid of Jim Boylan is already such an improvement for this team.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have to mention Billy Donovan.
Yep.
But-
I mean, you look at everyone I'm sure has seen the clips on social media of like the stupid things Boylan would do. Not calling a timeout when you have Luke Cornett on the ground clutching his ankle.
Yeah.
So the other team has to call a timeout for them.
Mm-hmm.
Or trying to like take Zach LaVine out of a, tied game with like 10 seconds to go and he has like 40 points.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's absurd. That guy, he could very well go down as the worst coach in any major sport.
Possibly, yeah. And it wasn't even just that he was a bad coach. It was that he lost the respect of the locker room. Like, after LaVine got benched, he comes back, has this amazing game. And when Jim Boylan goes to congratulate him, he just shrugs him off. And it's like, that's probably the worst thing you want to see happen to a coach.
Yep. I mean, I can't think of anything in recent memory in any sport where it was like that with the coach, where the whole team just...
It was a mutiny.
Yeah, it was just a no. Like,
Yeah.
you're our coach, but we don't respect you. We don't care
Yeah.
who you are.
I mean, overall on the roster, not too many changes. Obviously, they didn't bring back Chris Dunn. I think that's a bigger loss than people are making it out to be.
Oh,
'cause
definitely.
I'm a big Chris Dunn fan.
Oh, yeah. He's basically Tony Allen.
Yeah. I mean, the dude can guard 1 through 3. But that's pretty much all he really is just a defensive guy.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at, he's a point guard. He was playing small forward for them. Let's not forget. But as a point guard, he's definitely top 5 defensive point guard.
Absolutely.
100%, without a doubt. I mean, of course, we got to talk about them drafting Patrick Williams at 4.
I mean, he's just the guy they wanted. I respect going after the guy they wanted. I don't think anybody really wanted to move up or move down in this draft just because all the uncertainty. But I feel like he's a solid player. I mean, I feel like right now he's just slightly worse than Otto Porter.
Yeah.
Just at the 3.
I mean, from what I had read, he was moving up on everyone's draft boards who was working around stuff. He kept moving up, because he was originally projected like 10 somewhere in there, I think.
He was still a lottery pick, but not this high.
The only thing I can say is I'm very high on Isaac Okoro myself, and I would have rather them taken him because I think Isaac Okoro develops a jump shot. Dude's an all-star automatically, personally.
They say that about a lot of guys. Like, being a Pistons fan, that's exactly what they said about Stanley Johnson.
Right.
This dude develops a jump shot. He's gonna be a really great player one day.
Mm-hmm.
And you see where that went.
Right. Yeah.
Just asking players to just develop a jump shot. There's obviously more that goes into it than that. But
it's very difficult to do because I mean, we hear about the success stories of it. Kawhi Leonard, biggest success story of that. But then you look at a guy like Stanley Johnson or Michael Kidd Gilchrist.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work out.
Does not always work out. Next, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers, which, I don't know, I still don't really know completely what they want to do for their direction because they still have Kevin Love on the roster, which, granted, he didn't have the best season last year, but he was very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Can't play a lick of defense, really.
No.
Like, it's terrible on the pick and roll, but I mean, he's good offensively, and I feel like the only thing that stopped him from being traded was the contract that he's on.
Yeah, he's got one of those what you call an untradeable contract.
Yeah.
You can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes for that. And he's still a really good player. It's like whenever I think a player has a bad contract, everyone just says they're a bad player. That's not the case. You put Kevin Love on a team, a contending team, he's contributing right away. He's playing his role. He's doing what you want. That's what he did with the LeBron Cavaliers. He played his role, and he did that really well, and they got a championship with him on the roster.
Like, if you put Kevin Love in, like, the Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets, I mean, just every team needs a shooter. Granted, you know, he's not the best defensive player. He's going to get played off the court sometimes, but with a guy like Bam Adebayo or Jarrett Allen or whatever team has a good defensive big man that he can play alongside of, it's going to be a great fit. And he would be a great addition to any team. So keeping him on the team, obviously, you know, it makes him better. It doesn't make him a playoff team, obviously. But you got him, Andre Drummond, Garland, Larry Nance Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., who actually got into some trouble, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
Colin Sexton. I mean, you got some decent guys here that, you know, you just hope that they can keep growing as a squad. Adding in Isaac Okoro is a pretty solid addition. I mean, it gives them a lot more defense.
They have a really weird blend of really young guys and then veteran guys too, like Kevin Love and Andre Drummond and Matthew Dellavedova. Of course, he's a locker room guy. That's what he's there for. He's not playing much at all these days, but
I don't know. He had a good stretch to end the season last year before it got shut down, but it was a high of 14 points in that stretch.
Well, heck yeah, that's deadly for you.
But I don't know, the only question marks really I see on this roster, how is Colin Sexton going to improve? Because I think we already kind of know what he is. I think he best fits into the six-man role, just a scorer off the bench, because he's not super good defensively.
No.
I don't really think he's a two, but the Cavs play him as a two because they also have Darius Garland. I mean, they also added Dante Exum.
They did, yes, they did.
So, I mean, that gives him another guard to play in there.
Mm-hmm.
But Kevin Porter, with him, I don't know if he was arrested and released, or I don't know exactly where he's at, but he was arrested, so I wonder how that is going to factor him into getting back into the season.
That's true.
Because if we didn't have this pandemic, I doubt he would have been arrested because they'd be playing.
They would be.
When he got
They very much arrested. Would be. It's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, the Cavs, they're just one of those teams who I don't feel has a direction right now, just because of their contracts with players, stuff like that. They have a lot of potential there with their players, but it's just we have to see if they can move Kevin Love, because we say, untradeable contract, but no contract is untradeable in the NBA.
Yeah,
for the right.
No contract is untradeable. I don't know. I think we'll have to wait to see exactly what they're going to try and do. Wait for Andre Drummond to come off the books, and maybe next offseason you find a trading partner for Kevin Love. But before then, it's just develop what you can and see how this roster turns out.
All right, and next we have the Detroit Pistons, and I'm going to let Michael take the majority of this one because he's a Pistons fan. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of people on the Detroit Pistons subreddit have been like, trust in Troy Weaver. And then the draft and free agency happens. You know, they get like signing 5 centers. It's
letting Christian Wood go as well. I know you really liked him.
I mean, Christian Wood, he's a good player, but if they're officially starting the rebuild this season, because that's the way it really feels with all the moves that were made, the rebuild has officially started for Detroit.
See, I don't know if you can officially say it started when you still have Blake Griffin on the team.
He's going to be mentoring these guys, because you can't just go full 76ers or New York Knicks and just take every player worth any value off the team. You have to keep some guys to mentor the young guys, and that's something that's really underrated. That's why teams can stay contenders for a while, is because they keep the culture, they keep the locker room guys there. Granted, Detroit's trying to develop that culture, but I think this is a big way to go about doing it. And obviously they had a lot of roster turnover.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but it was all for the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the guys they signed, like a Jeremy Grant, very good role player there.
I'm wondering about his fit, but I think he'll fit in just fine because, I mean, he's a Swiss Army knife of a player. He can do pretty much anything he's asked to do.
Yep.
And I mean, even if the fit doesn't work out so super well, I don't imagine Blake Griffin's going to be on the team for too much longer.
That's fair.
And then, I mean, you got a guy like Killian Hayes. I was big on Killian Hayes before the draft. I heard some people saying that, he can't go right because, he's a left-handed player. But the report that came out about him not being able to go right was before this past season started. And if you don't think a guy is going to try and improve his game, especially one who's trying to be as drafted as high as possible, I think you're just kind of doubting how much these guys work on their game. I don't have any concerns about Killian Hayes. I mean, he's going to be young, obviously, but I think he's got a great mentor in Derrick Rose.
Very.
I think that's going to be very key to his development.
Yeah, and let's not forget here that point guards always take longer to develop.
Yes,
they
and
traditionally do take longer to develop to be a very good NBA player.
I think recently we've been seeing a lot of point guards who they'll come into the NBA and they'll just make a big splash. And I don't know if Killian Hayes is going to do that. I don't believe in him that much, that he's going to be just super good.
Like a Ja Morant type.
Like Ja Morant. But I definitely think, 2 to 3 years, he'll definitely be a solidified starting point guard. And then adding a guy like Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey at the draft. I mean, 2 good young guys. They both have defensive potential. And then getting rid of guys who, weren't super good at defense, like Luke Kennard. Obviously, they did get rid of Bruce Brown, who was good at defense, but he just doesn't fit the timeline. And like Thon Maker, Brandon Knight, just Langston Galloway, just guys that were end of the bench. Guys who didn't play defense. I really think that's what Troy Weaver's trying to do, is build a culture of defense.
Right. I mean, you look at Detroit teams notoriously in the past, especially their championship teams. Mm-hmm. Defense.
Yeah.
Big thing for them.
So it'll be interesting to see how this roster shapes up to be. I definitely believe in the Detroit Pistons, but that is a homer opinion. So next we have the Indiana Pacers. And if you've been following NBA news, obviously you heard about the Gordon Hayward thing. And granted, that affects the Celtics more, but I don't know how the Celtics didn't do that trade. Gordon Hayward really should be on the Indiana Pacers. But even without Gordon Hayward, I mean, they're still a good team. I mean, they made the playoffs.
Yeah. VO said he's committed after saying, I want out. So that's kind of weird to see. But he said he's committed, so that's going to be good to see. Because, I mean, they were a playoff team largely without him there. And when he was there, he wasn't Victor Oladipo before the injury, of course. That's not really ever going to happen right away. Mm-hmm. He wasn't playing his best basketball. You bring him back, who knows what TJ Warren's going to look like after his breakout bubble performance. Obviously, he's not going to be that, but he could still be better than he was and still be a really quality player.
I mean, looking down the roster, I mean, it's really solid. If I'm going to be honest, Jeremy Lamb, I mean, when is he supposed to come back? Is he supposed to be back this season?
I can't remember with him. I'm not sure at all.
But even without Jeremy Lamb, I mean, that pokes a couple holes in their guard rotation. But I mean, they still have guys like the Holiday brothers. They're both there. They both just signed extensions, I believe.
Yep.
And I mean, they're good two-way players. I mean, you got Brogdon, Oladipo, T.J. McConnell. So they're still good on guards. And then I still wonder what they're going to do with Sabonis and Turner, because it seemed pretty obvious to me that they wanted to trade one of them. But not getting Gordon Hayward, I think, really threw a wrench into their plans, because I think that their plan is to go with Sabonis in the future, which is obviously a good plan because
all-star level player.
Yep.
Really talented at the post, especially.
That, I mean, he's got a mid-range jump shot. He can play make a little bit, just like his dad. I think he's underrated in his playmaking aspect because he averaged 5 assists a game last season.
Most bigs are underrated in that aspect of things.
Yeah, but I mean, when you compare him to a guy like Jokic, obviously he's not going to be as good. But
oh, no, not at all.
I think he's still top 5 in passing for Big Ben.
100%. The Pacers are going to be a really interesting team to watch, that's for sure. They're definitely playoff bound.
Yeah. I don't see them being a top 4 seed, but definitely playoffs.
All right, so of course with the Bucks, Giannis, that's always the big thing. With the Bucks. Is he going to sign an extension? Is he not? I think they've done a lot to encourage him to. They've really revamped the roster to get him.
Missing out on Bogdanovich is not a good thing for the Bucks. I mean, it really hurts them because he would have, in my opinion, I think he would have been a perfect fit on the roster.
Oh, 100%. Though they did miss out on him because of that whole botch sign and trade thing. That's a whole different thing on its own. But they've really acquired a lot of players after that to make up for that, I think. I mean, you got guys here like Torrey Craig. Great defender. Really good player to have on your team.
He was a really good role player for Denver. And I think what he did was kind of understated.
Yeah, he really is. You have DJ Augustine, nice veteran backup point guard to have on the roster. Brian Forbes, pretty good vet too. Pretty defensive minded as well, alongside Torrey Craig, guys like that.
I mean, I saw this one thing. I think it was how everybody's going to fit into this roster, and just adding in guys like that. I mean, obviously you want more shooting, but I don't think you need a plethora of shooters on this team as much as people want to think they do. I think you just need a bunch of guys that, are semi-capable of shooting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you also need playmaking too. That's a big thing to have.
And playmaking,
And Drew Holiday, who they also acquired in a trade, good playmaker as well. DJ Augustine, he's a decent playmaker.
Yeah.
He can create a little.
And Bryn Forbes can handle the ball a little bit. I don't know exactly how much time he spent doing stuff like that in San Antonio, but I know watching him at Michigan State when he was in college that he'd run a couple sets a game. I mean, granted, he's not the best ball handler, but I don't really think he's going to be asked to do that in Milwaukee anyway. But still, the option is there.
Definitely. It's this is them going all in for Giannis, like they said they were going to when they had that meeting with him after the season concluded. And I think they have as good a chance to re-sign him as possible now with what they've done to show him that they're committed to it.
Maybe not as good a chance as possible, but they're definitely putting all their cards on the table.
Yeah, that's fair. And I saw this really interesting take from I can't remember who it was. I think it was like Rusty Buckets or someone. He's another YouTuber. He said he'd like to see players like Giannis, these superstars, sign one-in-one deals to always make sure the front office is
on their toes,
doing all they can to provide you with the best possible chance to win. Because obviously with Milwaukee, that's always a big thing for them. They don't want to go into the luxury tax, stuff like that. That's why they didn't bring back Malcolm Brogdon, even though he's a way better fit than Eric Bledsoe would have been.
Which was a huge mistake.
Very big mistake.
I think the problem with players signing one-in-ones would be take a guy like Bam Adebayo. He just signed the Supermax. And he tweeted out a picture after, and it was where he grew up. he grew up in a trailer park.
Yep.
Like, how can you convince? I know not every player in the NBA is just like that, but I know Giannis, his family struggled.
Yeah, he came from poverty. Talk about peddling sunglasses and stuff on the streets to make money, things like that.
How are you going to ask a guy like that to turn down an extra $100 million?
Because you never know. You can get hurt too.
Mm-hmm.
Players, their whole careers could end from one injury, which no one likes to talk about it. I get it. It sucks, but that can happen.
I don't know. I don't think players should really sign one-on-one deals too much just because I want these dudes to get paid. Like, they earned it. They're dedicating their lives to being good at a sport. Like, that earns billions and billions of dollars.
Yep.
So, obviously, get the bag every time. But, I don't know. For keeping it, I think once you've gotten, like, at least a couple bigger contracts, then maybe you could sign one-on-ones. But for Giannis, I don't know how you turn down that much money. So we have the Atlanta Hawks next, and I think this team is due for the biggest jump in standings in the NBA.
Definitely, they've made so many moves, and they've gotten so much better just from their signings alone. I mean, you hear people talk about how, Gallinari, he's 30 years old, injury-prone player, and they're giving him how much money? But Danilo Gallinari, he's a winning player. Every team he's gone to, he helps them win.
Yeah. I mean, he's a shooter. I think you mentioned me earlier about having him come off the bench, which
I think he's doing that. I think it was reported that he's actually going to be doing that. Granted, who knows how long that's going to last when you have guys like Melo coming off the bench and that lasts 3 games, but we'll see.
I don't know. I think Gallinari is a great fit kind of in a 6-man role because you think of all the younger wings that they have. I mean, I personally would rather start DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, and stuff like that, and then bring in Danilo, mostly to run against the second unit, but he'll match up against the first units of a bunch of teams.
And it's smarter to have him do that, especially when Trae Young's off the floor, because when Trae Young wasn't on the floor last year, that team was just awful. They were awful to watch. No one could create anything. No. Danilo could do that for himself and for others.
And somebody who I think is going to be a big help in that is Rondo.
Very true, Rondo.
Granted, Rondo last year in the regular season was not so good. But I still do think that he'll be a positive player in Atlanta. Even if, he doesn't have the best regular seasons, just having him there to teach Trae Young is...
He's one of the highest IQ basketball players around. Yeah. How could you not want your point guard to learn from someone like that?
Yeah, like him, Chris Paul. If I have a young point guard, somebody like that is who I want them to learn from.
Definitely. They're going to be an interesting team to watch. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think so. The West is always so competitive, and
they're an Eastern Conference team.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, my apologies. They're an Eastern Conference team. I don't know why I said that, but
I mean, they made a lot of good roster additions. Bogdanovich, Dunn, Gallinari,
drafting Okongwu.
Yeah,
he's got potential, a lot of potential, but obviously he's going to come off the bench. He's not going to start over Clint Capella because he didn't play at all with Trae Young. So you got to see how that works first.
And I mean, even their end of the bench depth with Solomon Hill and Tony Snell. I mean, it just gives them good wings, up and down the roster.
I mean, which they look at Solomon Hill; he was playing minutes in the playoffs.
Yeah,
he was guarding LeBron James at some points in the finals.
Whether he should have been or not,
that's a different story. But yeah.
So next we have the Charlotte Hornets, and I think this is going to be very interesting to say the least because
very interesting. I mean, bringing in. Obviously, Gordon Hayward. That's the big thing. They brought in Gordon Hayward on a 4-year, $120 million contract. I don't know if there's any options on that 4th year, like a player or team. I'm not at all sure.
I'm not 100% sure either. But not even Gordon Hayward, but also bring in LaMelo in the draft.
Yep, definitely. They got off of Batum. They waived him.
Yep.
So
and I don't see really what they're trying to do with their roster. I think that they're going to be bad for a little while longer if they really want to make a contender, because Terry Rozier is not a winning player, in my opinion, at least not the way he plays currently.
Yeah, I mean, you looked at him in Boston where he was taking shots that he shouldn't be taking, where you have other players who should be taking those shots that he was taking away from them.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not what you want for a team. I don't know what you can say about Devontae Graham either.
I mean, I think Devontae Graham is a good player. I think he is kind of the same player as Colin Sexton. I think he can play on or off ball, but he's a little too small to consistently play the two. But I mean, if you bring in a guy like LaMelo, I could see LaMelo and Devontae Graham working perfectly together. But then you toss Terry Rozier into the mix. I don't know exactly how.
It could be kind of a situation like the Suns when they had Bledsoe, Dragic, and Isaiah Thomas, where you got to move one of the guys. I think that's what they're going to have to end up doing, because obviously you draft LaMelo at 3, you're building around him.
Yeah.
That's guaranteed.
And if they're trading somebody, the obvious choice is to trade Rozier. What team in the NBA wants Rozier at $17 million a year?
That's a really good question. I don't know. There's probably a market for him for a team that needs a backup point guard.
They would have to give up picks.
That's true.
I don't know where this Hornets roster is going, but I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see how LaMelo's rookie season goes.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun to see, I think. And we might get that MJ LeVar Ball one-on-one now, so that'll be awesome.
Oh yeah, I would tune in to pay-per-view if that was on there.
Definitely.
Next, we have the Miami Heat, which, coming off of a finals appearance, I don't see a world in which they get better this offseason. Finish better. Obviously, I think their roster is already better with Precious Achiuwa, Bradley being added to the roster.
And Mo Harkless as well. He's a good player. He was just stuck in New York, so you never really heard about him after going there.
But, obviously they got all their young guys experience. And, I mean, that'll help them out in this year. But when you look at every other team in the East, how they got better, I start to doubt Miami a little bit. And maybe I shouldn't do that because, it's Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. He's always proved everyone wrong. Mm-hmm. 30th pick in his draft class, going on to be an all-star, leading a team to the final, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they have, one thing they've lost a lot is that defensive wing depth. Losing like a Jay Crowder, a Solomon Hill, Andre Iguodala as well.
Did they actually not pick up the option on Iguodala?
I'm not sure if they have or not. I think I was thinking of Derek Jones Jr. because he left too. He went to Portland. So they lost a lot of wing players.
But you still got guys like Tyler Herro coming back. He's going to be just as good, if not better, than he was.
He's going to definitely develop. You have Kendrick Nunn as well. We didn't see a lot of him, of course, in the finals, but
I think a big thing with him is that he had COVID, and trying to come back from it, he wasn't the same player that he was. He did do okay in the finals games, but what more can you ask from a rookie in the NBA Finals?
That's your undrafted rookie as well.
Undrafted, yeah.
And of course, they have Duncan Robinson back, too. Mm-hmm. Dude can shoot like no other. It's crazy. I love watching him just shoot the ball. It's so fun to watch him play.
Coming up, he's going to have to sign a contract in 2 years or a year from now. I really wonder what his value is, because he's so good of a shooter that you run the offense through him when he's on the floor, essentially. He's also not very good defensively.
No, he might be a pylon. Yeah, he might be the worst on-ball defender I've watched play basketball, which is saying something. And I don't know if they'll be able to run that zone like they were running in the playoffs and stuff, where they put those guys at the back of the zone. Mm-hmm. So they can kind of run around, try and get steals, stuff like that. Because you're not going to have those real defensive guys like Jay Crowder, Solomon Hill, and Derek Jones Jr. there.
But they did add Avery Bradley. And, Precious Achiuwa projects to be a good defensive wing, so we'll see how that plays out. But, I like their team. They're going to be a playoff team, but it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do during the season because I feel like this year is basic. Oh, granted, last year I thought this a little bit too. It's like their trial run trying to attract a star in this upcoming free agency.
Yeah, and that's gonna be hard to do too. I don't know what their money situation's gonna look like now that they have Bam on that 5 year, like $165 million contract.
I believe as long as they manage their options how they want to, I believe they'll still have enough space for around max slot.
Okay.
I believe. I haven't looked at the numbers, so don't quote me on that. But so the Orlando Magic. I mean, didn't really change a whole lot of things. I mean, they didn't have the cap space to really change a whole lot. Uh, they don't have DJ Augustine anymore, but they did draft Cole Anthony.
They did. Yep. He's a talented player. He very much is. He can score a little bit. He needs to work on his 3-point shooting, I think.
I feel like he's a bit of a project, which
most point guards are coming in.
Yeah.
That's almost guaranteed.
Unless you're drafting him like top 5.
Yeah, that's very true. He's talented. He's going to be obviously getting a lot of minutes because they don't have, obviously Markelle Fultz is their starting point guard, but they don't have a set in stone. This is the guy we want as our point guard because Markelle Fultz.
I mean, they just did resign Michael Carter Williams.
Oh yeah, that's true. He is a rookie of the year. In case anyone forgets. But the team from top to bottom is just it's a kind of a weird looking team. They're the guys that they don't really fit anywhere else. Honestly,
they don't really fit in Orlando either.
Yeah, but somehow they've made it work to make the playoffs. Of course, always being the 8th seed and getting knocked out in the first round isn't where you want to be.
They did take a game from Milwaukee, though.
They did take a game from Milwaukee. Let's not forget. Obviously, along with Cole Anthony, last year's draft pick, Chuma Okeke, he tore his ACL. That's why he didn't play an NBA game. No one's heard of this guy before and really remember him being drafted. He's going to be playing this year. So that'll be fun to see him onto an NBA court because I think you were telling me, Michael, he's a 4, right? I don't know much about him.
I say I'm not sure either because anywhere I've seen calls him a 4. But if I remember right, looking at his highlights from college, because I didn't really watch him, I could have swore he was the 3. But who knows what the Magic really want to run. As far as I can tell, they're just adding another front court player.
Yeah, and I hope he plays the 3 because Aaron Gordon can't play the 3. No. He's so bad when he plays the 3.
Yeah.
It's just look at him when he played with Serge Ibaka for that half year. He was so bad playing the 3, and then when Ibaka got traded at the deadline, he went back to the 4. He was doing really well. Mm-hmm. So it's just always, it's weird to see someone like that, Aaron Gordon, who can only play one position in a positionless era of basketball, if you want to call it that.
I don't think necessarily the problem is that he can only play one position. I think if he was able to shoot a little better and it was on a team where he was probably the best front court player, I think that would be a lot better for him. Like, I know last year there were some rumors about him going to Houston, and I think that probably would have been a fantastic move for him, but I mean, obviously it didn't happen, so I don't know what the future is for Aaron Gordon, especially with the Magic.
Yeah, I don't either. They're a weird team. They're in that no man's land position that the team doesn't want to be in because they're good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to get it to the finals or even the second round.
Yeah.
And so obviously making the AC every year, you're not going to have a top pick in the draft. Obviously you can steal a player, this, that, but it's hard when you're in no man's land to become better.
Orlando is not the team that is going to find a gem of a player. I mean, granted, they actually might have with Markelle Fultz, but like, you need a scouting department like Toronto to do that.
Yeah, Toronto.
Or Miami.
Yeah, and I think it also comes back to, we talked about this earlier, culture is a huge thing with that. Miami, Toronto have some of the best cultures in the NBA.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing with it too. They got to figure that out too. Culture is very difficult to build. That's always something you hear about it a lot. You can't put it into a certain box, if you want to call it that. you can build it, but it's going to take a long time and the right personnel to do it.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where the Magic will be at this season.
8th seed, probably.
Next, we have the Washington Wizards, which, I mean, again, another interesting team.
Yep. John Wall's coming back.
I don't know if they'll be a playoff team. If John Wall comes back as good as everybody is trying to make him out to be right now, then yeah, they'll be a playoff team.
Right.
But
of course, John Wall himself is saying, I'm ready to go, I'm 110%, but you're never going to hear a player say, I'm not 100% and ready to go. That's just not what you're going to hear from someone. They're media trained to tell you that they're ready to go.
Yeah. You'll never hear a guy like, oh yeah, after tearing my Achilles, I'm less explosive. I'm not as fast.
Exactly. That's not how it goes. And obviously a big thing that you've been hearing, everyone who follows NBA has been hearing, is John Wall. Is he going to be able to take that backseat to Bradley Beal? Because one minute he's saying, yeah, I can do that. I can take a backseat like Bradley Beal. But then the next he's saying, I'm shocked to hear that they want to build around Bradley Beal. Yeah. Which is really weird to hear when he just said, I'm okay with taking a backseat to him.
I don't know. I think the media has a funny way of spinning things, and I'm not worried about it. I want to see them on the court before I make any judgments, and media is just very reactionary. They want to pull whatever they can and
they
make
need
a
stories
spin out of it. Yeah.
Yep, they need stories. And that's a good point. You always need to see what it's going to look like on court. Because on paper, teams can look amazing. Yeah. But on court, it could be a whole different thing.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, the Washington Wizards, the whole John Wall, Bradley Beal thing, big question mark. I think the biggest question mark and the biggest problem with this team, defense.
Absolutely.
It doesn't exist in Washington.
Well, I mean, the best defensive player on the team is Robin Lopez.
That's true. That's very true, since he did sign there. I mean, beyond that, you have Thomas Bryant, who's a decent defender, and Ish Smith coming off your bench, who's an okay defender, and that's it.
If John Wall does return to his previous form, unlikely, but if he does, I'd probably say he's either the second or third best defender on the team, because, I mean, he's a solid defender. I mean,
he can keep up with any guard just because of how quick he is.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how big his wingspan is, but he's got long arms. So
he does very much so. The team is just you really need to take a deep dive and focus on defense with them, because their whole game plan is, let's outscore this other team we're playing, which is fun to watch. I love watching it. Yeah. But once you get into late game situations where you need to stop, it's over for them. Or when you get into the playoffs, it's over for them. It's not winning basketball. It's fun to watch basketball, and they're two completely different things.
Yeah. I would have loved to see what Daryl Morey would do with this team.
That would be fun to see. Oh my gosh, I would love to.
But I don't see them as being a playoff team unless John Wall really comes out and surprises me.
Right.
But they didn't make any additions. They don't have the cap space to.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty much going to see the same team as last year.
Yeah, of course they added Adiha. That's probably the biggest thing with this team, is they added him, and really, really talented player. Not the best defensively. He'd be a really good team defender, but on a team without defense, you're not getting a good team defender, because that's just how it works with a team defensive player. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, Adiha, I'd say he fell in the draft. With this draft, it's really hard to say, oh, this player fell or went up, because this draft especially is so uncertain. There wasn't that one or two guy like last year where he had Zion 1, Ja 2. Mm-hmm. So Adiha, he's a talented player. I don't like all of the Luka comparisons he gets, because
he's not Luka.
He's not Luka. It's the same thing that happened with Dragan Bender after Porzingis had his breakout season, where they're like, this guy could be the next Porzingis, even though Porzingis just came off his rookie year, and Bender was playing like 5 minutes on a team. So it's players like that where they're the leftovers of a hype train.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm not saying that Adiha is going to be a bad player. I think he's still going to be a really good player, but he's not going to be Luka Doncic.
I think the ceiling for him is borderline all-star.
Yep, that's very true.
We'll have to see how he improves his game, but I mean, he looks like a offensive player that, has all the tools on offense, but I don't know. I guess we'll see how he adapts to the NBA.
Yeah, it's him putting it together. That's the big thing.
All right. If you enjoyed this, I want to thank you for watching. Drop a like, subscribe if you want to, and thank you for watching.
Have a great day.